Hi, Debonair Kovacs. Welcome back to 40 Ways My Labyrinth is Like My Life. Before I read this one, I need to remind you that what I read about will have happened when I wrote this book, which was in 2011. Number 35, the roses aren't always in bloom. It's all very well for people to admonish you to stop and smell the roses, but until about a century ago, roses bloomed once for perhaps 2 weeks in mid-spring. That's why they came to be synonymous with evanescent youth and beauty. Maybe it's symptomatic of our youth-chasing culture that in the 19th century, breeders began working on those few roses which rebloomed briefly in fall, and eventually created roses which now bloom all summer. Still, even those roses aren't always in bloom. So even though there's time to stop and smell the roses when you walk the labyrinth, it can't always be done. You might have to find something else to be present to and appreciate. Sometimes that's hard. Other times, it's nearly impossible. 2 days ago, I learned that my beloved, young, healthy, strong mother had been found dead in her home. The screaming hysterics didn't last, though I don't imagine I'm through with them. I'm in that numb zone familiar to those who are familiar with grief, the zone in which you make and receive about 500 frantic phone calls, talk fairly reasonably to funeral directors and pastors, just as if you really know what you're doing or saying, hunt down plane tickets and fill suitcases and crowd together with other suffering family members and then find yourself laughing but avoiding crying. Don't worry, the crying will come back soon enough. My mother is dead. How can the world possibly go on without mother in it? The idea is incomprehensible, terrifying, obscene. But I'm not the only one familiar with grief. Neither are you. Jesus is the man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. Isaiah 53:3. He has walked this labyrinth before me, walks it beside me and my family, and beside you too. And the roses will bloom again. This I know. My mother could make a rose out of anything, anything at all. We used to try to stump her. Toilet paper, peanut butter, cloth. Never did. Stump her, I mean. Some years have passed since I read this, but every year at about this time of year I go through this same difficult time. Not as bad as it was then, and if you're going through grief, I assure you that it will get better. You'll just never stop missing that person, but the roses will bloom again. See you next time.